this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Sunday chat again. I'll seem to come round quick. These weeks are just flying by. It's probably because I've got so much to do. Anyway, as it's Sunday, we must do the business. So if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, please think about doing so. Costs you nothing. Forget the expression, subscribe. Subscribing to the channel is a click. That's nothing more than it is, but it helps the channel be visible to YouTube and helps the channel grow, as does the thumbs up, the like button. Both of those help the channel. As I said, zero cost, zero effort. The changes I did to the adverts to include the mid-roll ads, that's working well. I hope you're okay with it. Those that have been here long enough to know when it wasn't there and now it is. But I did make the change and make all of the ads that you see with my videos skippable. So you do get the choice. Yeah. So if you get any of those stupid long ones, you can just skip out completely. So that's the ads. The patron system is working nicely. I've got no complaints about that, and thank you very, very much for those who've joined in with that. Details are in the description as usual. And the odd buy me a coffee is a nice little thing when I get up in the morning. I go into my mailbox and it says, so-and-so bought you a coffee, or so-and-so bought you 3 coffees, or whatever. And it's a nice little thing to go and sort of say, thanks for your support. So nice little thing there. So that's that lot. Right. I don't do that with all the videos like some do. I'm sure with some people it's pre-recorded, but I don't do that. Right, the show yesterday. The show yesterday started at 2:15 in the morning. No, it wasn't that far away. What it was the police helicopter rattling all my flipping windows. I reckon he was actually sat on the blinking roof, it was so low, and it was circling and hovering. And it woke me up, obviously. As I said, the building was shaking. He must have been very close by. Now, obviously, they got a job to do. The police helicopter also combines with the air ambulance. I think they share. And I would imagine if a call came in as an ambulance-related issue, then whatever they were up to would just get dropped and they would go and deal with that, because that would be a serious emergency. But somebody's probably nicked a car or something and they were helping find them or whatever. But at 2:15 in the morning, and it went on and it went on, and I got ratty. Because I thought, well, this is just flipping ridiculous. How many people are losing a whole night's sleep here? So in the end, I got up. So my show day started at, well, I actually got up about, must have been about 20 to 3, I suppose. I didn't look. I thought, no, we'll just pretend it hasn't happened. Anyway, I got on and did my computer stuff. It's very quiet at that time of night, or time of day, whatever you call it. Anyway, I had to leave the house quite early anyway, so it was a little bit of a bonus because it actually gave me plenty of time. So, you know, make sure my plants were ready and secure and everything like that. So, and I had time to have something decent to eat before I left. And away I went. And something rather special happened on the journey, and I wish I'd taken the risk, but it would have been a risk. I was actually on the motorway at the time. Was I? Yes. Yeah, going through the forest to get to the motorway was misty. There was low mist around and some patchy fog. So, you know, you drive to the road, or the speed limit, whichever comes first, but if you come across a foggy area, then you make sure you've got a set of red lights in front to follow. Don't be the leader. Driving in fog is awful. Unless you're behind someone, and then you just follow them and just hope they're going the way you want to go. Anyway, so that was that. I got actually onto the motorway proper, and the most marvellous sunrise happened. Now, it wasn't a sunrise above the horizon, it was a sunrise above a bank of cloud. Yeah? So it came up above that bank of cloud like a harvest moon. Not like bright sunshine, because it was badly filtered by the amount of moisture in the air, basically. It was a very foggy, misty morning. And so it was like a moon. and it was just above that cloud. And as the motorway sort of dips and things like that, occasionally that dipped down behind a tree line. And my camera's sitting on the passenger seat, and I'm thinking, shall I take the risk? Shall I actually just pick the camera up and point it and catch that? I could have waited for a point where it went down behind a tree line, and then got the camera out, and I could have filmed it coming up above the trees as though it had been speeded up when it was just in fact the shape of the land. But that was absolutely stunning. And at one point I was going through a dip, and it was full of mist. The road was raised slightly, and the dips either side were just covered in mist, and the sun had come up just above the tree line and lit it all up. It was like it was on fire. But you get a camera out on the motorway, you've got cars on both sides, and they don't all have big stripy things on with blue lights on the top. Some of them are quiet cars. And I mean, that would be a serious offence on the motorway. so I didn't do it. But be safe and all that. Anyway, I got there nice and early, helped set up some tables and put some cloths on, the old black cloth job, make it look pretty, all that sort of stuff. Got my plants in. I had to wait quite a while to get my plants in, because there's no point in bringing your plants in until you can put them on the tables. And we had a really good caretaker. I know they've got jobs to do and everything, but we had hired the place. There was very little else going on. It's a school, so there's it's a Saturday. There's not much going on. I think there was a juniors dance class going on, and I think they ended up doing it outside. COVID stuff, I suppose, I don't know. Anyway, we got some tables going, and then looked round, and the caretaker's wandered off. He's left his radio on reception, so we can't call him, because and he's just wandered off somewhere around the school. We can't go wandering off looking for him, and he hasn't unlocked the cupboard to the rest of the tables, so we couldn't set up the tables. Everybody's sitting there twiddling their thumbs. So trials and tribulations, but eventually got it all set up and put the plants out. And once we'd actually got to the cut-off point, we sort of started looking at the table thinking, we're going to have to do something with this. And you'll see in the video of the plants that I'll put up tomorrow, I'm not doing that today, there's the sort of central table where I'll be filming, the competitive plants basically. But then there's a display to the side, yeah? The lady who does that is got a very artistic nature. She's very good. She'll make anything look good. She came round the tables and she said, "Oh, this lot looks a right mess. We'll have to sort this out." Of course, you make the categories for the classes, but then you get some classes haven't got anything in. So you sort of, it's not very nice having empty classes. It makes it look a bit bare. But it had ended up with most of the plants up one end, and then not much, and like one big one, well, my Vanda actually, up the other end, and it looked all lonely on its own. Oh, I'm not having this sort of thing, so she started moving stuff around. Everything had been judged by then, so, it didn't matter so much, because when somebody places a plant for judging, you're not allowed to touch it. Nobody is. That's where it stays. The only time you can move it is if you ask the show manager, is it okay because somebody's stuck that great big one right in front of mine and it can't be seen? Yes, I'll give you a hand, but with permission. So anyway, yeah. Lots of people got firsts that wouldn't have expected to, because there just weren't many plants. I think I may have learnt my lesson finally at Wessex, although this is not normally a competitive show, their autumn show, it's just a display show. Anyway, my friend Alan told me off yet again. I was just talking about, God, I could have brought some and put them in that class. Well, why didn't you then? Just bring them in. If they've got flowers on, bring them in. If they don't go on the table, they can go in the display. And I keep forgetting, So anyway, I learnt my lesson. The Pleurothalids class, for some reason or other at that society, they have Masdevallias separate. And then they have the rest of the Pleurothalids. And they have a section for species and a section for hybrids. Well, I could have taken 2 Restrepias in, one for each class, couldn't I? And got a first in both, because I'd have been the only one. I mean, I don't go there to come back with trophies and first stickers and that's not why I go. I go to take part. But it would have made the table look better to have had something in those classes rather than a bare bit of black cloth, you know, with the title. And the first, second and third stickers sitting there all lonely with no pots to go in. Of course, it makes judging really easy if there's only one plant in the class, because they just plonk the first in and move along, you know. And they only come back round when they're looking for best species and best hybrid, which I didn't get those. But anyway, so it was a good show. They managed to do the catering got messed up. We only just managed to have some. The school had farmed out their catering to a separate company, so it's no longer in-house. And that company said, "You're not using our kitchen." That's it. It wasn't open to debate. You're not using our kitchen. You're not to go in there. Yeah. So we had to find another way. We had a little pokey little kitchen, you know, one of those where you take it in turns to walk past, sort of thing. You know, little kitchen that we could use. We were allowed to use that because that belonged to the school and not part of the kitchen. So we bought a little cooker thing. It looked like a microwave or a small oven with 2 little rings on the top. We had to do everything in there, so all the bacon and all stuff like that all had to be done on this one little unit. And like, you know, if somebody was cooking the bacon, then whoever was up that end of the kitchen couldn't get out, because you had to sort of do all this to get past each other. But we managed. Everybody had drinks, everybody had some food, and some gorgeous homemade cakes again, as usual, as always. So the show went off okay. I've taken over the treasurer's role formally now. I mean, I've had the post for a while, but there's been nothing to do. And quite honestly, it's a baptism of fire, because the show is the event with the biggest number of items in to deal with, if you see what I mean. A normal meeting hasn't got much going on, but a show has. You know, you've got the hire of the hall, you've got the various floats that come out to go out, you know, so that people have got some money and some change to start off with. Well, you've got the catering one, you've got the raffle one, you've got the door, you know, so there's all these things have now been messed up because they're not nice and neat and tidy anymore. They've had money added to them. And the guy who's been doing it before, he's of an incredibly tidy mind. And he's actually doing stuff all through the day, so that at the end of the day, it's virtually all accounted for, because he keeps at it. I wouldn't probably do that. It would wind me up. So I'd probably just gather everything together at the end of the day, check the floats back in, because whoever's had a float, they know what was in it when they got it, and they should have counted it if they've got half of any sense at all, to make sure it says what it is. Otherwise you'll be accountable for the wrongness, you know, if there's an error. And then obviously when you bring it back to the treasurer, you both sit there and count it and write down what's there. Then we know, well, you started with that, we've now got that, we've made this much profit, minus any expenses. So it's all relatively straightforward, but I'm not touching that. I've packed it all up and I've brought it back and I've dumped it out in the hall. I'm not even going to look at that until one day next week when I feel like it. And the biggest downside that really is going to wind me up with the treasurer is you have to bank. I'm going to have to go to a bank with bags of money to pay in and cheques to pay in. I mean, you can do cheques via an app nowadays, but I don't use my phone like that. So, and that's going to annoy me because I'm going to have to go into town. I'm going to have to pay to park my car. I'm going to have to go in a queue to deal with the bank. It's going to wind me up. But nobody would do it. It was one of those jobs that you have to have. You know, we couldn't not have run a show without a treasurer to account for the money. You know, it's funny, I went out in the car park, one guy came up to me, he said, "Look at this, he's only been treasurer 5 minutes, he's already bought a flashy car." Cheeky monkey. Joking, obviously, I've had the car quite a while. Anyway, so the show was a success. Lynn, she's chairman, you know Lynn, she was expecting a loss, or just about break even. We actually made some money. Catering did well, people bought stuff. Enough people came through the door to cover the cost of the hall and some other bits and pieces, so we've made some money unexpectedly, and that's always good. When you expect to make loads of profit and you don't, it's a real, real upset. But when you only just about expected to break even and you've actually come away with a profit, it doesn't matter how much. We didn't make a loss. So, and we had a nice day for it. It didn't rain, because there's nothing worse than loading and unloading in the rain. I think the traders did okay. Arthur was there from Burnham's with his lot. Lawrence was there with his legs out as usual. I'm sure he needs a license like that. He's always got shorts on, Lawrence. Always. That was it. There was only the two. Oh no, Peter White was there. I haven't seen him for a very long time. He didn't bring... I don't think he brought his plants this time. I didn't take a huge amount of notice. He had his... Peter White is... Orchid Accessories is his website. That's what he's known for, is the bark and the fertilizers and the pots and all that sort of stuff he sells. But at a show like Wessex, if he comes along, or the Bournemouth one where he normally comes, he's normally got plants as well. But they're just the bought-in type. But he gets some oddities. He gets some stuff that the others can't get at because of what he is, his standing in the orchid world. So he can get at stuff that others can't. So he has little surprises now and again. Like he had a tray full of Restrepias once that had come from the Eric Young Foundation. I've still got one of those. Well, you can't get out of the Eric Young Foundation with plants. They're a foundation. They don't sell plants. But he managed to get out with a tray full, all labelled up as well. So, yeah, the show was good. It was good. Right, how much time have I wasted? Less than 20 minutes. We've got some time to go. Now, the chat today is an interactive chat. Now, I know, not live, obviously, but I'm going to spark off my ideas as I go, and I'd like comments on which ones are the better ideas. And it's all geared up to moving and where I end up. So it's an imaginary place, because I haven't ended up anywhere yet, have I? I'm still here. Here we are. Still, and that's going to go on for some time, I think. But so let's imagine I get a place with a conservatory. Now there'll be two types of conservatory. There'll be one, well, three really. There's one that's roughly the same size as this, in which case we can lift the whole lot up, take it and set it up again. We could have one quite a bit smaller than this, so it ain't going to fit. We could have one bigger. Well, the bonus there is just I spread out a bit and it'll cost more to heat. But nothing would change. What happens if I get a smaller conservatory, considerably smaller? Say it's like a third as big. Well, it ain't all going to fit in there, is it? So what do? Well, two choices. My brain works like this. You get to a decision point and then you work the choices out, and then you go down those paths and see if there's another choice, and you end up hopefully covering it all. So we've now got a collection that won't fit in the conservatory. Two choices. We downsize so that it does fit, or we put some of the orchids somewhere else, and that somewhere else would be in a room in the house. Pluses, for pros and cons, I think you call it, pluses and minuses. Right, so first of all, we've still got our conservatory, yeah? Secondly, we've now got some plants growing in a home environment. Now, is that a good thing? Well, it's more work for me, because obviously watering becomes a flipping pain in the whatnot when you're working in a house, one plant at a time. Or what I would probably do is I'd load up a load of plants in a tray and then take them to wherever, the sink or whatever, where there's a drainer, and do that set. And then forget about them, and then take them back and get another tray. So I could manage it. Bear in mind I'm retired, I'm not, I end up with almost half of most days with very little left to do. But becoming a treasurer and with my mum's stuff going on at the moment, that ain't happening anymore. I'm busy all the time. So anyway, so we would then have part of the collection in a home environment. Is that a good thing? Yes. Why is it a good thing? Because that's how many of you grow. Yeah? And this doesn't relate to a lot of people. They love the pretty blooms and they like to hear about how I look after them, but they're growing them on a windowsill, you know, or in a room with grow lights. Yeah, so it doesn't relate. They're not a closer match. So I'd have more plants that would be of more interest to more people, I think, possibly. So we can have some comments about those choices and how it will happen. Can't make those choices yet because I don't know where I'm going to be. But what I could do, because it's causing me grief looking for a place with a conservatory, is just say, right, the conservatory's out. Let's just go for a place that's got an extra bedroom that I don't need to use as a bedroom, and it becomes an orchid room. So all we're looking for is somewhere that's got a nice big bright window in it to help with the light. And that extra room, and all the orchids would then be growing in the house. Would that be a good thing? Well, if all the orchids are going to go in a room, the first thing that's got to happen is the carpet's got to come up. We've got to get down to the floor, haven't we? Most houses are going to have an upstairs room that would be that spare room, unless it's got a separate dining room downstairs that I could make do without. Yeah, so if it had, like I say, a big enough kitchen to put my dining table in up against the wall, then I'd have a spare room downstairs, which would be much better, because there'd be more of a chance of that having a concrete floor. But not all houses are. This house here is an older house, and the downstairs floors are concrete. Yeah, so if you took the carpet up, it wouldn't matter if you spilt some water, would it? However, if you've got any other type of flooring, it does matter if you spill water, and you mustn't. That becomes a big deal. So those are the cons of having houses growing in the home, is water drips and actual watering and all that sort of stuff. But so we could we do without a conservatory? It would change the collection. Chances are my cooler growers wouldn't put up with it, but then they're not supposed to be putting up with it out here, and they are, you know, so we could see. Right, so let's go back to downsizing then. Now, how do we downsize? Well, again, two choices. Do we look at the number of plants we've got, or do we look at the size of the plants we've got, or do we look at the type of plants we've got? And there's three distinct choices there. If I want to keep representatives of all the types of orchids I've got, then we would have to downsize based on size, because you get rid of less if you get rid of the big boys. And some of my big orchids are not going anywhere, especially some of my larger dendrobiums that I've had for many, many years and are special to me. I'd probably get rid of that big purple Vanda. That would be a shame, but I could live without it, I suppose, if I had to. The trouble is, in here it doesn't take up any space because it hangs from the roof. And there wouldn't be anything else up there, if you see what I mean. But yeah, if you start downsizing on space, some of the bigger Cattleyas could go, some of the bigger Miltonia Oncidium types could possibly go. I wouldn't like to, but you know, if it had to happen, then so be it. But the first thing I would do is get rid of everything that's not growing well, that is not special. Because that would go anyway. If I'm going to downsize, it might even go when I'm not downsizing, because I just can't be bothered to pack it and take it. It'd be easier to chuck it out. But yeah, things that are just not doing well for whatever reason, it's a good chance to sort of get rid of that sort of thing. Thinning out, like I do with the plants to go every now and again. It would be like that. So, plants that I'm bored with, that I've had a while, and I sort of think, well, when I got it, it was a good example, but since then I've got 2 or 3 others that are better examples, and so that one's not quite so good to me anymore, but it might be nice for somebody else. So we've got that sort of thing to think about. Do we think about how something's being grown? Because I've got an awful lot of mounts, so they're not so good in a house, but they can be accommodated, and in one form they can be accommodated better than shelves. How does that work then? Well, what you do is you have your hanging space on a wall, yeah, like Insa's got, lots of hanging racks on a wall, and a wallop great grow light pointing at the wall. That's different, because when you've got shelves, your grow lights need to be above. Yeah, because shelves have got plants 2 or 3 plants deep. So if you have the grow light pointing at the shelves, the plants at the back aren't going to get any light. And it's traditional with shelves to put the lights above, and then you're only lighting the top shelf, because the plants in the shelf are shading the ones below. Right, so we have to have some lights on the next shelf down, and the next shelf down, and we've got 15 shelves. It's not happening. I'm not buying that many grow lights. So you'd have to think about, if you're growing in the home, have you got enough light through natural light or not? And if you haven't, think about some grow lights. I might have to do that. So we've thought about size, get rid of the big boys. What about type? Well, what types would be the obvious? Well, warmer growers. Yeah, if the warmer growers aren't there, I don't have to worry about adding so much heat in. And in a house, I may even have enough without having to have additional heating, just the ambient temperature of the room. You know, probably have a radiator against a wall somewhere, keep the chill off of it. So we could get rid of the warm growers up that end. We could get rid of the warm growers and the really high light ones, which won't do so well in a home. Yeah? So we've got choices there. What else could we get rid of? If we're going into a home, we could finally bite the bullet and say, right, all those cool growers are going. You know, but unfortunately, if you look, all my Restrepias and Masdevallias occupy 1.5 shelves. They don't exactly take up a lot of space. I haven't got too many of them, simply because they don't do as well as some of the other plants. But in amongst the other plants are actually cooler growers that everybody forgets about. I've got some cool growing dendrobiums that are not supposed to get too warm. I've also got some warm growers that are not supposed to get cold. Yeah? But, yeah. It would be quite a decision. If I had to say, if I had to get rid of 1/3 of the space that these orchids take up. So I wouldn't say 1/3 of the plants, it's 1/3 of the space they take up. So you get rid of fewer plants, the bigger they are. You get rid of a lot more plants, the smaller they are. So you end up with a lot less plants if you start discarding smaller ones, because they can squash up, you know, they can huddle up together. So, some thoughts about if I have to downsize or if I have to change from a conservatory to growing in the house, or part thereof, part conservatory, part house. So, ideal set of circumstances is the conservatory's there, but now, what about that conservatory? Because one of the ones I've already seen faced north. It never ever would get any sun on any of the glass. Now if it was a normal house, it might do. In the height of summer, when the sun's at its high spot, it could come over the house and catch it. But not that one, because that was 3 stories high. It ain't going to come over the top of that. Not without a ladder. So that would have been a north-facing conservatory. So all the high-light orchids wouldn't have done very well. And I wouldn't have had any natural heat from the sunshine through the glass. That would have gone. So we'd have been, right, cool growers then. Cool growers now shine in a conservatory that gets no sun. Yeah? And you don't have to go mad with the shading either. It's just natural light, you know. So perhaps a single layer of shading on the longest days in the summer. You're not trying to keep the heat out, you're not trying to protect it from the sun, because there isn't any. See what I'm getting at? And then, you know, come autumn, you take all the shade netting off, just natural light. It'll probably be fine. So there's that side of things. Now at the moment, this one doesn't face south, it faces southwest. And that's a bonus, because I get 1/3 of the day before the sun hits it. Now if this was a greenhouse out in the middle of a garden, it would get the sun most of the day. Now that's a big deal, because the plants are under a lot more stress then, because I know it sounds daft, but first thing in the morning in the summer, at 5 o'clock in the morning, on a clear day, there's enough heat in that sun at that time of day to start warming your greenhouse up. And it's going to be there till 9 o'clock at night. That is stress of a high order. So you've got to block it. You've got to stop it getting in there. So you've got shading, cooling mechanisms, extractors, big fat windows open, fans going, you know, different type of thing altogether. Now, one idea that came up yesterday, chatting away with some people, was, well, what about if you couldn't have a conservatory? What about a greenhouse in the garden? I said, well, that's up to a landlord giving you permission to have a greenhouse. And what about when you leave? Are you leaving the greenhouse there? Because dismantling them, taking them somewhere else and putting them up again is a big deal. Putting them up the first time is relatively easy compared with taking them apart again. And, you know, it could be a big deal. So, but it's a thought, it is a possibility. But then you've got a freestanding greenhouse. You wouldn't get permission to start playing about with the electrics and stuff like that. So to get any power in that greenhouse, you'd have to have a extension lead, you know, one of those on a big roller sort of thing, and plug it in the house, you know, and walk down the garden with it. So not ideal at all. But if that's the last resort, then that might be what we have to do. We'll get a serious problem, because obviously when I move in, the greenhouse doesn't exist. And it's got to be ordered. And then it's got to be delivered. And then it's got to be constructed. Where are all the orchids in the meantime? They're in the house somewhere, aren't they? Yeah? They might end up just staying there. Having set them all up in the house for a period of time, would I really want to undo it all and put them somewhere else? I don't know. So these are the thoughts that are going on. And the options. There may be other options, but they're going to be a bit obscure and may not be suitable. Doesn't mean to say you can't put your ideas forward, but the logical choice is to carry on searching and try and get a place with a conservatory that still is in a place that's suitable for me to get to the places I need to get to, which is Wessex. See, now where the Wessex show is, I don't count that. There's only 2 of them a year. I don't care if I have to travel a long way to get to that. That's irrelevant, yeah? But where we meet is 8 times a year. That's far more important, yeah? Well, that's near Winchester, so I need to be able to get to there. I need to be able to get to Hannah's, because that's normally once a month, and that's important to me. And I need to be able to get to Bournemouth. Now again, it's 8 meetings a year, but I'm on the committee, and they have their committee meetings on a separate day. So Wessex have their committee meeting on a meetings day, because they meet Saturday afternoon. So the committee get there a bit early, do the committee stuff, and then the normal meeting takes place. It's only one trip, and kills 2 birds with 1 stone, which is actually a flipping good idea. But Bournemouth meet on a weekday evening, so they have their committee meetings on a different weekday evening. So, but they don't have huge numbers of them. But you know, I would need to be able to get to that. Everything else goes out the window because it's not frequently enough to worry about. So where it is still has to be considered, really. So we go for a place with a conservatory, as that's my priority. That's what I want. That way this just transfers over. It should be okay. Who knows, I might get a little bonus and have one with a little radiator on a wall somewhere, you know, which will save my electric heater firing up quite so often. But the trouble is, when you have a radiator, they tend to push their heat straight up in the air, so you end up not really being able to put much above them, so you lose some space. So I'd rather see my heater points at the middle where there aren't any plants. It heats up the space and drifts to the edges and upwards where the plants are, and I can control where I point it. So you can't do that with a radiator. So the radiator would be part of the normal house central heating, so it wouldn't be an additional cost. So swings and roundabouts there. So priority, we still carry on looking for a place with the conservatory, but as time ticks on, if that hasn't happened, then we have to start thinking, right, I've got to have something, so what's next best? Well, we up the number of bedrooms to have somewhere for the orchids to go, or we look for a place that's got a separate dining room and a large lounge and a large kitchen, so that there's 3 big rooms on the ground floor, one of which can be for the orchids, one's to live in, and kitchen with a place to eat. That will be the next choice. And gradually we go to less and less near what I want, but have to have something. And the longer the time goes on, the more that's possible. That I'm just going to have to take whatever there is there. So starting next week, I'm going to look more often for a start. But I'm not taking away my fussiness yet. I'm still concentrating on conservatory first. I've still got one I haven't seen yet because they haven't done the viewing schedule, so it's brand new on the market. So, and I shall start storing those away, you know, so that I can keep track of them with the phone numbers and stuff like that. So we're still keeping going. We're still at it. It's all a worry, in a light-hearted way. But it's not really. It is a worry. But you know, we'll get there. Eventually, we will get there. We've got no choice. Somehow or other, we need somewhere else to live. So we can get it going. Right, that'll do for today. That's not a slide. We're not up to the hour, I'm sure. No, it's a far more sensible amount of time. So again, you know, thanks for those who've subscribed and joined in with the patrons, sorry. And thanks for the odd buy me a coffee. It's all appreciated. It's all good stuff. And the way it's going to work is the more that the adverts bring in, and the more that these separate things bring in, gives me an amount on top of my pensions. Yeah. What I'm going to end up having to pay for rent and bills and my running costs is like that amount, and everything else going to come to about that amount. And there's this bit on the end that I can't afford, and that's the bit that will come out of my savings and my share, my inheritance out of the house. So even though I can't afford that, I can only afford that, I can afford that really, because it'll just get topped up from other money. Yeah, now obviously I haven't got the inheritance for the house yet, but I've got enough to cover it meanwhile, so we can just about get there. But there's a finite amount of money for that bit on the end, and if it runs out while I'm still alive, we've got a serious problem. Because I would protect, well, the chances of me being in the same place, that the place I take now, the chances of me still being in that place in 10 years' time are slim. So I know what landlords are like. They don't like you staying there too long, but they do like you to stay there for quite a long time, because obviously it's a big deal changing tenancies and mucking about. So, but yeah, that's the plan for the way the money's going to work. So the more I've got nearer that finite amount, the less I have to use up savings and things like that. So that's the bit you're helping with by watching the ads and joining in the other stuff. Plus the actual expense of moving. I haven't even looked into that yet. I'm going to have to get the goods and chattels valued. That's my job for next week. That's one of the items I probably need to do next week, along with going to the funeral directors with my 2 sisters to sort out a funeral. But I can't get much further with the paperwork I'm doing until I've got some values to put in the boxes, which I haven't got yet. So there is a person I need to see to sort out the valuation, and that is the same person that will clear the house out. So he has a vested interest in coming to see what's involved. Yeah, so that should work out okay. Doesn't live too far away. His business is quite close, so get that done. And then that expense is not my expense. Getting the valuation done is estate expense. So although I'll end up paying for it, I can get that back, if you see what I mean. Because when we split up the estate, the first thing we do is give back money that people have spent to enable us to get to that point, and then what's left gets split into 4. So I'll get that back eventually. But the expense that will be mine is getting my stuff out of here, moved to where it's going to go, and obviously I'll have to hire a van. I can see no other way of doing it, to actually take the Orchid Collection and the last bits and pieces, the bits that come out of this house at the point where I'm probably not going to come back again, apart from an odd occasion, but I'm not living here anymore. That point will come, and that's when things like the TV and the computer stuff go. The cats come with me, just those last little bits. The orchids would have gone the day before or the day before that via a van, and I suspect my son will help. So these plans are coming together, but you know, if you found yourself in a position with this lot and you had to go to a new place and you didn't know exactly what it was going to be, that's the point of the chat, is the options that could be available and the choices that would need to possibly be made. The point at which there will be no choices is the point where I found a place with a conservatory at least as big as this. Yeah? And in theory, the chances of me getting a 3-story house are next to zero, because that one's already gone. They don't come up often. So in a normal house there would be some sun, at least in the summer months, the same as there is here. So that would be the ideal set of circumstances, is where the conservatory is at least as big as this, and then everything just goes. No decisions to make. I might clear out some odd weak plants and sort of think, why am I taking that bin? That sort of thing. And I will sort out my kit, not electric kit, I mean my bark and things like that. I've still got an amount of old Orchiata bark out in the hall in bags that I just end up putting stuff on top of stuff. Well, obviously I need to have a clear out, but the beauty of the house clearance is this is a luxury most people don't get. They not only take the good stuff that they can possibly sell on, they clear the lot, and that includes a heap of rubbish in the middle of the floor. They don't care. You pay for it. So I don't have to worry about getting rid of any of my rubbish. They'll do it. So yeah, right, so we're sort of, the plans are there, you know, the various paths these plans can take, and you know, somewhere down the end of one of those paths is an end, and that's where I'll be, and that's where these will be. Yeah, so we'll see how we do. And that was the last show. There is another show I could go to, but I won't, it's too far away. But that's the last show now for this year. You know, where the two societies will be looking forward to a normal meeting and planning for the Christmas dues. You know, I might even put a tie on. It's a novelty. Actually, I do usually wear a tie to the Christmas do. That's it. To wear it any other time of year. I might have to put one on for the funeral, I suppose. But yeah, so those are my ideas, those are my plans, and the variables within them. And then, you know, I'll just have to keep searching, and eventually I will get a place. But there are some hold-ups. The agencies which deal with it, you don't have any contact with the flipping landlord. You might meet the landlord at the property once you've signed up, if you're lucky, but you don't normally meet with them. They pay the agency to do it, and the agency is all geared up to people working. They don't understand that some people might want to rent. I presume that what they're assuming, I suppose, is if you're retired, you probably own your own property, so what are you renting for? Well, not everybody does, and they don't cater for these differences. They're difficult to work with. And the other thing that holds me up is the two cats, because an awful lot just say in huge big capital letters, no pets. Some say one small pet considered, you know, to be discussed. But, you know, what Hannah said is just don't tell them. You know, just, because I'd get the keys for a property, it's now mine, and it's empty. Well, I won't be moving in that day, I'll be moving in stages down the line. It's like Hannah said, just sneak the cats in when nobody's looking. Nobody will know, that's what most people do. You know. Anyway, that's, you know, we shall see. But, you know, in the long term, you know, the cats won't be here forever. They're 16 heading, well, they'll be 17 next May. So, you know, they're, whatever that is, 16 and a half, which is a pretty good age for cats. Some go on. I mean, my sister's cat was 21 when it eventually died. So, you know, they can live long and prosper, so to speak, especially lazy toads like mine who don't do anything. You know, they don't catch any mice anymore or any birds. They just look at them. That's it, you know. They just look as if to say, from here to there, nah, forget it. Sometimes they look out of the window, there might be one up on the gutter and they do that chatter thing, that they do. Never worked out what that's all about, because it does make a noise, you know. Well, if it's something that they plan on having a go at, they've just warned it that they're there. Not that bright, really. Yeah, so, you know, it's moving along slowly, and I've now got interruptions, because although getting out and getting somewhere to live is a priority, there are other things that slot in front, like sorting Mum's paperwork out, getting that underway, and sorting the funeral out, getting that out of the way. Once those two items are off the list, my time becomes quite free again. So, you know, we can put maximum concentration into getting somewhere if I haven't already got anywhere. But I've got the go-ahead to move out as soon as I want to. And like one sister said, the sooner the better, in case you hold up the sale, which they don't want to happen. So we just get on with it. In the first place I get that's suitable, that I you know, that yes, you can have this property. Where do I sign? Let's get it done. So, right, that'll do for today. As I said, if you're not subscribed, think about doing so if you're still here. You haven't dozed off. And click the old thumbs up. Both of those help YouTube see the channel in a growth vein. And if they see a channel that grows, they will give it a nudge. Yeah, their algorithms will put you on a higher position in a search. I mean, there's some searches YouTube just can't get out of. If you put into Google, if you put into the YouTube search repotting Phalaenopsis, and somebody's got a video that's called repotting Phalaenopsis, they cannot not put it at the top of the list. It's got to be on the top of the stack with all the other videos that match exactly. When you come into not quite matching exactly, that's where the variables and YouTube take charge. If it's not an exact match, then they get to choose how far up the list it comes. You know, page 10, for instance, which is never going to get found, is it? So it does help, yeah. So think about, you know, do the old thingy and think about subscribing if you're not already. And the Patreon thing is a personal choice. It's a monthly contribution to the channel with the mindset that you're putting the channel in a position where it can be maintained in a place other than this. Yeah, because while I was here I wasn't paying rent. That's a large chunk of money that I'm now going to have to find. That's what that's all about. It's giving me the ability to have another place other than this and be able to keep all this going. See, if I didn't take this with me and I just said, right, blow the channel, let's do away with it completely, then I just need a little cosy place for me. 2 bedrooms so that I've got a guest room, you know. It would just be for me. Well, the cats, I suppose, while they're still with me. I wouldn't have to worry about this. But then what would I do all day? Duh. Yeah, this is my hobby. Yeah. So it would be nice to keep it going, wouldn't it? As long as I physically can. Because don't forget there is a physicality involved. There could come a time when I'm not mobile anymore, and so I can't have things hanging up high or whatever. In theory, that's a long way off. It ain't going down easy. Right, so I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. Tomorrow's video will be something to do with the show. There's probably enough video footage there to actually split into 2. because I want one of the videos to be for Wessex to go on their Facebook page. So you know, that'll be pretty picture, pretty blooms and music sort of thing, and then the other clips I might put together and then add a soundtrack. You know, do some talky bits along with it. So I'll see. I haven't viewed the clips yet. All I did was offload the camera. So right, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by, and real big thanks for being here. It's good stuff. I enjoy all this. I hope you do too. Well, if you didn't, you wouldn't be here. Is that logical? Yes. See you next time.